Hey, vinyl community, welcome back to Dad's on a Budget Vinyl. My name is Mark. I appreciate you stopping by. I hope everyone's having a great day. I know that I am. I am off today, and I am a happy Southerner. I have my ham in the oven. I've got my greens on the stove. I've got my yams ready to go in the oven. I've got my sweet tea made, and we'll whip up a cornbread and have a good family meal and have a good time. And as I was making that food, I had a bunch of Blue Note music playing on a playlist, and I thought, I've got a little time. What better time to sit down and celebrate Blue Note records? And the story of Blue Note. I mean, wow. There's a lot of videos that you can look up, and there's a couple of different documentaries that you can check out. We'll talk about a little of those. The Blue Note story is deep and it's been well told, and I'm not about to do an exact overview or a deep historical dive. What I'd really rather do is just have a Blue Note show and tell. And if you saw the room tour, you saw Blue Note stuff everywhere. Donald Byrd's up on the wall, Miles is on the wall, Alfred and Frank are over here behind me, and I love Blue Note records, and I want to have a little show and tell and show off a few things, and we'll touch on some historical moments and a little bit of history and that type of thing. But mostly, we're just going to have fun talking about some video, some books, some records, and some CDs, and have fun talking about Blue Note. So, you guys know that Blue Note Records, the story of Blue Note begins with Alfred Lion, and born in Germany, and when he was about 13, 14 years old, he went down to the skating rink, got there a little bit early, and caught the tail end of Sam Wooding and his Chocolate Kitties, and fell in love. They were playing that pre-war jazz, that swing, that New Orleans style, that ragtime. He fell in love with it, and it touched him and made a mark on him. Well, by 1933 in Germany, that music had become outlawed. And, I want you to imagine that for a moment, the music that you love, but the music being outlawed because it was subversive and whatever. So anyway, he saw the writing on the wall and left Germany and came to America. In 1938 was in America when John Hammond put together his Spirituals to Swing show at Carnegie Hall, which was, a historical moment. He had a hard time getting financial backing for the show because it was integrated musicianship, and it was for an integrated audience. And basically, what John Hammond wanted to do was shine a spotlight on black jazz from early on, the spirituals and the slave songs, all the way up through what they deemed modern jazz at that time. Alfred Lion was there. Several different big names were there. Count Basie was there. Benny Goodman was there. Big Joe Turner was there. But the two musicians that he saw and fell in love with were Meade Lux Lewis and Albert Ammons, the stride piano players. Wonderful energy, especially when they played together. And he saw that and fell in love with it and said, I have to record that. I have to record that. Now, no financial concern at all, except for how am I going to pay for this, right? He wanted to get that music on wax, not just to have a historical capsule of that music and the recording of the music and to be able to spread it among the masses, or at least try to. He wanted records that he could play in his living room of music that he loved. And so within a couple of weeks of seeing Meade Lux Lewis and Albert Ammons at that show, he had them in the studio and was cutting records. So Blue Note Records was formed. They didn't make really any money. You know, there's Alfred with his trunk full of records, and he would try to drop them off at Woolworths or furniture store or wherever he could on consignment, just to try to sell a few records and keep the whole thing going. The Porter Harlem Jazzmen and several other different things that Alfred recorded or produced during the time. They did okay, but 6 months into it, in July of '39, they had a huge hit with Sidney Bechet's Summertime, the Gershwin tune, which is absolutely wonderful. That clarinet with that nylon string guitar, it's just absolute perfection. And here comes a little bit of money, and now we're up and running. But unfortunately for everyone, here comes the war, right? In full swing. And the next thing you know, shellac's hard to come by, and records are a little bit more difficult to get made, and materials are a little bit harder to come by. So that period was pretty lean, throughout up until 1945, 1946. But several things happened. In 1947, Alfred had a choice to record Bud Powell, who was obviously well known on the 52nd Street scene at the time and respected among musicians as being just a brilliant, very precise, very articulate, super fast piano player. Or he could record Thelonious Monk, who everyone thought was quirky and hard to work with and hard to get along with. And Alfred took a chance, and he went with Thelonious, and I'm so glad that he did. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in 1949, he went ahead and signed Bud Powell, recorded Bud Powell. Bud, brilliant musician, but by that time had already had his first breakdown, and went through some really struggled with some mental issues. And Alfred really took him under his wing. I mean, spoke later about how he loved to take him to Western movies, and and the tragic story of Alfred kind of rescuing him from underneath the car where he was hiding from the bouncer that had just thrown him out of the club for playing the piano without playing the piano. You guys know that tragic story, and Alfred scooped him up and got him a cab back to his place, and really nurtured these artists. They weren't just musicians. They weren't just someone to make a record with. These people were friends of his, and he cared about them. And I think that that's the foundation of what Blue Note would become. So Alfred's friend, Frank Wolf, ended up, Alfred convinced him to come on over, and I'm sure Frank wanted to, but he was a little bit hesitant at first, but realized that he needed to get out of there, and ended up on one of the last boats out of Germany, headed for the U.S. And he came over and joined Alfred in his business adventure, Blue Note. And it's a good thing, because Alfred, they say, was kind of outspoken and boisterous, and Frank was quiet and reserved and a little bit more focused, and a brilliant photographer, and would end up contributing in many ways to the Blue Note story. And real quick, just in 1952, Miles Davis. Miles was at that point in time at the height of his heroin addiction. His career was really kind of on the way down, and Alfred loved his music and went ahead and cut some sides with him. And that's kind of where my Blue Note story begins. I wasn't always a Blue Note fan. I didn't always know. If you guys have seen my vinyl story, you know that I started playing the trumpet in the band like 11 years old, and My buddy Brad played the horn, and his brother Chuck played the horn, and I was a part of the Big Brother organization where they'd have a guy that come and hang out with you a couple of times a month and kind of take place of a father figure and that type of deal. And I had one named Ben, and he was a really cool guy, and he played the horn. And so, I was into the trumpet. So when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, yeah, I had my Boston and Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and Floyd records and my Jethro Tull and my Yes records and my Emerson Lake and Palmer records. But I also had a lot of what I refer back to now as white guy jazz. And it wasn't by design. It wasn't really even a conscientious choice at all. It's just kind of what I had been exposed to. I was into Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but in the jazz world, it was all about Maynard Ferguson and Doc Severinsen and Bill Chase and Bill Watrous, and even before that, like Benny Goodman and Woody Herman, and then later on like Pat Metheny and Chick Corea, and I didn't know. I didn't know. And along the way, of course, I was exposed to Miles Davis. And in falling in love with Miles Davis and wanting to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into Miles, I came across Miles Davis Volume 1, the Blue Note on the Blue Note label. And a little bell went off, but not a huge one. And then before long, it was Coltrane's Blue Train, and another little bell went off. And then a couple of things happened. Number one is I happened to be flipping through the channels one night, and I came across this. This is Julian Benedict's Blue Note, Story of Modern Jazz. This is a fantastic documentary from a musician's perspective. The whole story. It's all right here. That's a wonderful thing, and I saw that. And then I was headed to a show in Denton, Texas. And Denton, Texas is not far from North Texas State University that have a wonderful music program, a wonderful jazz program. And there was a Best Buy there, and I was running early, so I thought, let me check out and see what they have. And went in and noticed really quickly that they had a huge jazz section, and specifically they had a lot of Blue Note jazz. And I guess it's because they were in such close proximity to the school that because I'd never seen anything else like it. And they were priced at like $5.99 and $6.99 and stuff like that. So there you go. And that's what we were buying at the time, CDs. And so I bought hundreds of them and so many classic releases. And so that's how I became a Blue Note guy. And out of the hundreds of Blue Note records that I have purchased on CD or vinyl, man, I've only been disappointed a couple of times. And if it boiled down to it and someone had a water pistol to my head and said, okay, there's only one label that you can keep out of all the labels, Atlantic and Columbia and Verve and Prestige and Reprise, and I know, right? I love those labels, but Blue Note, man, it just has brought me so much joy over the years. And I love it when you come late to the game and you find out about an artist or a label, an author, and you realize that you missed out somehow on the first time around, but now you've got their entire body of work to go back and discover. And that's the way that it was for me and Blue Note Records, because I didn't know. And after seeing that documentary and diving deeper and deeper and deeper, I wanted to go all the way back, and I wanted to bring it all the way forward. So a couple other things is that around that time, 1999, that's the 60th anniversary of Blue Note Records, and all of a sudden there was a little bit more awareness of Blue Note and some newer artists coming out and stuff like that. And I want to talk about all of that. So let me stop talking and show some stuff. This is a great little book, Blue Note Records. It doesn't tell the whole story, but it certainly tells some wonderful stories, and that's a great way to go. This is the uncompromising Expression Blue Note. This is a chunker, and this has everybody. Okay, you can see the names on the back there, and you get why Blue Note Records is the most sampled record label of all time. And this is a wonderful book, and comes all the way, covers, the front end of Blue Note really, really well. The wonderful artwork, the graphic design of Reed Miles, and the photography of Francis Wolff. But, it brings it all the way forward, to 2012. Don Was takes over from Was Not Was, and producer Stones and Bonnie Raitt and a bunch of different people escape me right now, but he became president of Blue Note Records in 2012. So this pretty much covers from the beginning all the way up to that period, with Don Was coming aboard. It does a really good job of doing from the story, the origin story, all the way up through like the mid 70s, and then brings it forward to the huge success of Norah Jones with Come Away With Me. Wow, right? Norah Jones, who everybody told her she needed to be on a different label, that her music wasn't jazz. But she loved Blue Note Records, and she wanted to record on Blue Note Records, and so she did, and thank goodness that she did. But kind of skips over this period, I think, from the mid 90s up to like the mid 2000s, where I think Blue Note was still just as fertile as ever. So we'll talk about some of that too. Real quick, these are the photos of Francis Wolff, and this is another one of those beautiful books. I mean, man, his artwork, his photography, absolutely amazing, and it graced so many of those covers. And we'll take a look at some of those covers, but you'd take, Frank Wolff's photography, and then you'd take Reed Miles' attention to detail and eye for graphic arts, and come up with some of the most iconic record covers of all time. Okay. And I said earlier, if you're a jazz fan or a record collector, Blue Note Records. Well, if you're a jazz fan, you know Blue Note Records, but record collectors the world over collect Blue Note Records, just because of their value. They may not even listen to the music, because some of these records are $4,000 and $5,000 and $6,000 at auction, and they regularly pull that. Talking about album covers, this is Blue Note with a forward by Horace Silver. I love it. But these are those iconic. Oh, by the way, yeah, Cool Strutting, Sonny Clark, $3,600 at auction for an original pressing. But these are all the different, just absolutely iconic, beautiful, wonderful album covers. So we talked about 47. Blue Note picks up Thelonious Monk. Thank goodness that they did. His music is wonderful. Ruby, my dear. And then 49 picks up Bud Powell. 52, 53, 54 records Miles Davis. And right there, look at that. If you can see that. Jimmy Smith, baby. So anyway, you see how easy it is to take a deep dive on Blue Note Records. I want to talk about some essentials, and then I want to talk about some fun stuff, okay? On these essentials, I'm going to kind of blaze through them real quick, and I'm sorry I've got them all on CD, because that's how it was. That's how I bought them. And but the music is absolutely fabulous. I don't want to take a deep dive on either one of them, because most of them if you don't know these records. So I'm hoping that with this video, there's someone that doesn't know Blue Note at all, and based on enjoying this video and what we're looking at, says, man, maybe I should take another look, and turns on to some of these fabulous records. With no further ado, and these are pretty much in alphabetical order, you've got Cannonball Adderley, Something Else. I mean, come on. Miles, Cannonball, Hank Jones, Sam Jones, Art Blakey on drums, Essential, Gorgeous, Mosaic, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Crisis is one of my favorite tunes. Mosaic, one of my favorite tunes. John Coltrane, Blue Train, 5 songs, classic. The only album that Coltrane recorded for Blue Note, and I think it's his best album. Um, the aforementioned Miles Davis Volume 1 or Young Man with the Horn as it first came out on a 10-inch back in 1952. But these are tracks that were recorded from 52 to 54. Classic. Essential Miles, Essential Blue Note. Eric Dolphy, Out to Lunch. Another classic cover. Another classic cover. Hat and Beard, Straight Up and Down, Out to Lunch. I mean, it's a classic. Another 5-song classic. Grant Green, Idle Moments, title track, Django, Nomad. I love Nomad. Herbie Hancock, Maiden Voyage. Come on, and I could have pulled so much Herbie Hancock, but had to pull this. So I the Hurricane, Little One, Survival of the Fittest, and Dolphin Dance, along with the title track. Classic. Mode for Joe Henderson, with the absolutely beautiful. Everything about it actually. So let me read this off to you just real quick. Joe Henderson, Lee Morgan, Curtis Filler, trombone, Bobby Hutcherson vibes, Cedar Walton, Ron Carter, Joe Chambers. Oh, Rashawn Moncourt III, Evolution. The first time that I heard Evolution, it was something that my ears had never heard before. It was beautiful and sad and just so moving and so wonderful. And I thought, and I remember, this is silly, but I remember listening to that thinking, man, maybe I've grown up a little bit if I'm enjoying this, but it's just absolutely beautiful. But it does take a different ear. Okay, Genius of Modern Music, Volume 1, Thelonious, essential. You have to have it. Thelonious music is so quirky and but so fun and up and lots of space for other people to do cool things with him. His stuff with Milt Jackson is fantastic on vibes, but this is that first 10-inch that came out. This one, here's the actual 10-inch of Volume 2. But these songs, I mean, Ruby My Dear and a Mysterioso and Epistrophe and Straight No Chaser and Round Midnight. I mean, come on, man. Monk is just a world of his own. We could spend an hour talking about Monk. This is the best of. These little best ofs are fantastic. But Thelonious, Ruby My Dear, Well You Didn't, Needn't, April in Paris, Monk's Mood, In Won't Mud, Round Midnight, Evidence, Mysterioso, Epistrophe, I Mean You, 4 and 1, Crisscross, Straight No Chaser, Ask Me Now. Bam. Bam. Thelonious. The Sidewinder, Lee Morgan. And that was a big hit. And, upbeat and very cool. And Lee Morgan's tone, man. Wow. But this for me, Search of the New Land. That title track is haunting. It's brilliant. It really is. It's 15 minutes, 44 seconds long. You never get tired of it. You always want more of it. The first time I heard it, it just kind of gave me shivers. Okay, Bud Powell, the amazing Bud Powell. You guys know this. Speak No Evil, Wayne Shorter. Perfect record. Wayne Shorter. We could spend an hour talking about Wayne as a composer, as a player. Horace Silver, Song for My Father. Steely Dan, Ricky Don't Lose That Number. That is directly lifted from Horace Silver's Song for My Father. But that's another wonderful record. And real quick, The Sermon, Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith, organ player extraordinaire, absolutely wonderful musician. Those are essentials. Whether you get them on CD or vinyl or whatever you can get them on, just get them, okay? They're essentials. They're going to bring you so much pleasure. You don't have to be a jazz fan, but they will make you jazz fans. Hard bop, bebop, but always thoroughly in the pocket. Melodies and timing and dynamics and, so we talked about Alfred, we talked about Frank in, not long after came along Rudy Van Gelder, the engineer, who is the one behind the sounds of these records, okay? And just, an absolutely wonderful engineer with a sound for recording and acoustics and dynamic. And then in 1955, Frank Wolf hired Reed Miles to come aboard. Reed, who had worked with Esquire magazine, a couple other publications, came aboard to start doing graphic design. And a marriage was born. So between those four, Alfred's love of the music and the musicians and his vision, Frank's attention to detail and photography and management, Rudy Van Gelder's ear and wonderful knowledge of how recording studio and acoustics and space work, and then Reed Miles with the graphic design. So between those different things coming together, by the time 1962, 63, Blue Note was the epitome. They were the standard, okay? This is the record we looked at earlier, but there's a Francis Wolff, and if you could see, I've got that framed up on the wall, but there's a Frank Wolff photograph with the Reed Miles layout, the huge amount of blank space with the smaller black font and the larger red font. It's just brilliant. I love it. It's iconic. It's still classic. Fantastic. Let's mow through a few of these real quick. Now that's not a Frank Wolff photograph, but this is Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Moanin', another classic, another must-have. So in 1954, 55, 54, a couple of things happened also with Blue Note. Art Blakey came aboard. I think Orgy and Rhythm was recorded in 54, but not released until 58. But he came aboard, and Art Blakey as a leader, but also as a session player on other people's cuts. But just as he really was kind of like the mascot, Frank and his wife loved Art Blakey, and all of the musicians respected and loved him. And then Hank Mobley came aboard and became another one of those that Alfred kind of took under his wing, and Hank became an incredible leader in and of his own right, and played on a ton of other, and these guys all just kind of moved through. They'd play on each other's dates, but then one of them would be a leader, and whether it was Wayne Shorter or Herbie Hancock or they just kind of did a rotating chairs type of thing, and maybe that's why there's a tightness to a lot of the music. Art Blakey, The Big Beat, that record that I got from the library that I fell in love with, It's Only a Paper Moon, that I could listen to over and over and over and over. Free for All, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And this is Wayne Shorter, of course, Art Blakey, Reginald Workman, Cedar Walton, Freddie Hubbard on horn, and Curtis Fuller on trombone. Man, another one. If you love guitar music, I don't care what type of guitarist you're into. If you like guitar music, Kenny Burrell. The first time that I ever heard G Baby, what's the name of the song? I'm having a senior moment. G Baby, Ain't I Good to You? The first time I heard him do that, I was like, wow. But this record, laid back, dark, late evening, smoky, Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue. Lou Donaldson, I mean, sax player, such a jovial guy, such an upbeat guy. If you watch that story of modern jazz, I mean, Lou's on there, and you can tell that when they all get together and come together to kind of talk about the show and talk about Blue Note, they just love being around Lou. Next time, Sonny Rollins, look at that. Sonny Rollins, man. And again, Wynton Kelly, Doug Watkins, Philly Joe Jones, and Sonny. Down with it. Blue Mitchell Quintet. Night Dreamer, Wayne Shorter. So beautiful, so cool. Fuchsia Swing Song, Sam Rivers. I haven't once shown a Blue Note label, but that's as iconic as everything else is. Love that. Blue Note, finest in jazz since 1939. This is a fantastic record. Bobby Hutcherson, the vibe player. But this is, Harold Land, the flautist, and Bobby, the vibe player. Just look at that. And to me, I mean, going down south, just a classic. Sampled so many times. Speaking of sampling, Madlib, Shades of Blue. So Madlib, musician, producer, DJ, gets together, is allowed to go through the entire Blue Note vault and pick out different things to either remix or re-record or sample or whatever. He came out with this, Shades of Blue, and it's wonderful. Horace Silver, all Bobby Humphrey, all types of stuff are fantastic. Love it. Stanley Jordan. So I remember when I heard this, I think like maybe on NPR, him doing Eleanor Rigby. But I was intrigued and really intrigued when I found out that he was on Blue Note Records. And Stanley, man, can play guitar, make it sound like three different people. The only record that he recorded for Blue Note, Pat Metheny and John Scofield, and I love this record. The red one, I Can See Your House From Here. One of the newer Blue Note records, not new anymore, but at the time that I got into Blue Note, Cassandra Wilson, fantastic voice, fantastic interpreter of other people's material. And just a wonderful artist. Chris Whitley's on this, does a really wonderful job. Strange Fruit, Death Letter, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, Last Train to Clarksville is amazing. Harvest Moon, Cassandra Wilson, another great one to pick up and try out. And then I wanted to real quick just show some more of these 10 inches. Volume 1, Art Blakey, the quintet. This is Night at Birdland. And you know the record, Split Kick, Once in a While, Quicksilver, Wee Dot, Night in Tunisia. But this is these little 10 inches are really cool, fun to collect. Milt Jackson, talking about him earlier. And Gil Millet, who has a big part in the Blue Note Story of Modern Jazz documentary. And then a newer band, Go-Go Penguin. If you don't know Go-Go Penguin, electronica, but with acoustic instruments and just something completely different, a little bit different than the Medeski, Martin, and Wood. And that's a wonderful thing to pick up. All right, I'm almost done. I'm not sure how long I've been talking, but I talked about how that book, Uncompromising Expression, is such a good book, but that it kind of skips a period. The artist, in my opinion, that should have been paid much more attention to. And if you don't know these records, if you don't know these artists, definitely check them out. Junko Onishi. This is the first thing that I got of hers. She is so precise and brilliant, and she had come to the States to study at Juilliard. Fell in love with jazz. Decided to do that instead. So percussive in her playing. This is Fragile, and that's another wonderful record. The Piano Quintet Suite. Some of my favorite stuff, though, is her as a trio. This is them in Europe. And this is them in New York at the Village Vanguard. So tight. So tight. Really, really good music. All right, and just a couple other things I don't want you to miss out on. Tim Higgins, okay? Brilliant trumpet player, bright, so good. But uses, tape loops and hip hop elements and drum loops and different things like that. Charlie Hunter plays an 8-string guitar. Fantastic stuff. Band is incredibly tight. Medeski, Martin, and Wood. I could spend 30 minutes talking about the Wood Brothers. Them as a band, MMW, the Morphine Connection, but Medeski, Martin, and Wood, this is fantastic. Whatever happened to Gus? Gus got the key. Marcus Prennup, Unveiled. Fantastic. Check it out. Don't know what else to say. Javon Jackson, Good People. That particular track, Good People, is about 10 minutes long. Makes his saxophone sound like an electric guitar. Jackie Tarasin, Reach. And it's occurring to me, I didn't pull any Kurt Elling, but you need to check out Kurt Elling too. He's a singer, an interpreter, and a scatter, and I used to work with a guy his music drove him crazy, but like him a lot, Kurt Elling. And then this is one that I just came across. If it has Blue Note on it, I'm willing to buy it. And I saw this little set, 5 original records. This is Paolo Frisu, a horn player, 5 little discs, and they're just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I'll pick that up just based on the fact that it's Blue Note, and have fallen in love with that. Last but not least, Blue Note these days, right? Isn't it ironic? We talked about how Don Was came aboard as president of Blue Note Records in 2012. Don Was, who had produced the Stones and so many different bands and had such massive success as a producer. And it's a trip because just a few months back, my wife and I went to see Ryan Adams, and there was Don Was playing bass in Ryan Adams' band, president of Blue Note Records playing bass in Ryan Adams' band. And now Ryan Adams is coming out with a record on Blue Note as well. So, I mean, the record label definitely has evolved. Alfred stepped out of the picture in the mid-'60s and sold the rights. And then the story from there on, you can look it up and check it out. But Blue Note is still very, very much alive. And just real quick, I want to talk about a couple of records that have meant a lot to me over just the last few years. Bill Frisell with Harmony. And this is a wonderful, it's more of a vocal album than a guitar album. But it's a wonderful record. It's a wonderful recording. And this is the type of thing that you can expect from Blue Note these days. And it doesn't really matter if it's their Tone Poet series or whatever it is. It's always going to be good quality stuff. You can spend Lord knows as much on it as you want to. Ron Miles, I love that record cover. This is another thing that I purchased simply because of 2 things. It's Blue Note, and I love the cover. I didn't know anything about Ron Miles, but he's a trumpet player, really bright sound, really tight band. And Bill Frisell's on it as well, so that was a big selling point for me. But the packaging's beautiful, the music is still wonderful. So Charles Lloyd and the Marvels, and this one features Lucinda Williams. We've talked about her on the 10 records I pull and alt country, but Charles Lloyd is amazing, a musician in his own right, beautiful arranger and composer and sax player. There's a close-up of him and the band with Lucinda. And then last but not least, Tone Poem on Tone Poet, another Charles Lloyd, The Marvels. This is a wonderful record. And again, the type of quality that you can expect. It's heavy cardboard. It's beautiful. It's the pressing is nice and thick. And so it still represents the same quality, still pays honor to that same reputation that Blue Note has had all the way through. So again, I hope that there's someone out there that doesn't know or didn't know Blue Note that wants to take a deeper dive now. I hope that there's a Blue Note aficionado out there that's saying, man, I knew all of that, but let me let me go put that record back on. There is so much more that we could have talked about. We have hundreds of Blue Note CDs we could have talked about, but those are classics, some essentials, some newer stuff, some visual things, and then a video for you to check out. Blue Note Records, all right? Thanks for hanging out. Let's go get some ham and some sweet tea. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.